Let's create a cute skunk card using Woodland Critters die from Fawn. Hello everyone, this is Neha Tulsyan from Crescent Creation. Welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm using the Woodland Critters die from Fawn and creating skunks out of it. I was inspired by the cute skunk images from Fawn to create this skunk out of Woodland Critters die. And it wasn't that hard to create. You would see that it was pretty easy as I put it together. Before I get into it, I just wanted to show you how I separate my dies. I have this wire snips from a long time because I used to make jewelries. So any good wire cutter would help, but I will link some for you in the description box below. Once I have separated all my dies from each other, I like to go very close and cut off those tiny wires that's hanging off my dies. While cutting these tiny wires, I just don't snip them directly, but instead I twist my hand that the die is holding. And this way those tiny wires don't go flying around in my craft area. Instead stay right there on the wire snips, which I can collect later on the paper towel. And this is how the die looks, clean from all the sides. And to store my dies, I glue some magnetic sheets onto the packaging of the die. Magnetic sheet comes out of this roll that I got from Amazon. These are good for the dies that we use and are little pocket friendly. So here I have all my dies out that I need to create my skunk, and I'm using grey, black, white and pink cardstocks to die cut all my pieces. And before I start putting these together, I wanted to first work on my card. Since I'm making a slimline card today, I have a white cardstock that I die cut out of the largest die from the Fawn slimline with sliders die. I'm creating a rainbow background here, so I have some distress oxide inks in rainbow color. I'm using my blending brushes to ink up my background. For the purple color, I'm using Victorian Velvet Distress Oxide ink. Next, I'm using tumbled glass. I'm adding this blue color just below my purple color. So I'm happy with the amount of color I have on my background. I'm gonna go back to the purple color and blend both the colors using the purple color. Then I'm just gonna go back and forth between both the colors a couple of times until I get a good blend. Here you can see a beautiful transition between both the colors. Now I'm going to move on to my third color, which is green, and I'm using Twisted Citron here. I'm just going to go ahead and speed up this blending process because it's going to take me a couple of minutes to blend all these colors and I don't want you to keep waiting. So I used squeezed lemonade for the yellow, spiced marmalade for the orange and sponge sugar for the pink. And now that I have my base layer ready, I'm gonna step up this background by stamping an image all over the background using the darker shades of rainbow. This will give me a kind of a tone and tone look. If you're bored with those simple ink blended backgrounds, I think this is a good way to step up those ink blended backgrounds and just create something more fun out of them. Here, as you can see, I'm stamping the balloon image repeatedly on this background. This balloon image is from the Scent with Love add-on stamp set from Fawn. I'm stamping the image with a little darker ink from the background. As my background is in rainbow color, I'm using 6 different colors to stamp this image. So I'm using picked raspberry to stamp over sponge sugar, ripe persimmon to stamp over spiced marmalade, mustard seed to stamp over squeezed lemonade, salty ocean to stamp over tumbled glass, and lastly wilted violet to stamp over Victorian velvet. Again, I'm using all Distress Oxide inks today, and that kind of finishes my gorgeous background. I could not leave this background without adding some splatters. So I splatter my background using some black soot ink, diluted the ink using some water, and then using my paintbrush just splattered all over the background. The next steps are completely optional. You can stop here if you want, but I just wanted to show you what other things you can do with this background. Since I'm using Distress Oxide inks today, they have a property to react with water. So I'm using that in my advantage. I have some Stardust liquid glitter on my mat and I have diluted it with water, and I'm using that as a paint and painting inside my heart balloons. And on my other hand, I have this paper towel that I'm using to pick up the paint. So the water reacts with the ink on the background and kind of loosens up, and I just pick pick it up using my paper towel, leaving behind a lighter chalky finish. Because I'm using Distress Oxide inks today, I am gonna get those nice chalky finish look when water reacts with the ink. But if you do not like that chalky finish, you can always use Distress ink and you will get that beautiful reaction that the Distress inks do when they react with water. Since I'm using glitter water, I have this beautiful shine on my balloons, which I cannot really show on the video, but it's there and it's just very beautiful and gorgeous. Since I lifted the color from the balloon area, you can tell apart the balloons from the background, which really looks good. But then I also decided to add some white highlights to my balloon. So here I'm using some white paint from Copics. You can use any white paint that you have in hand and just add some highlights to all these balloons. Once I'm done adding highlights, of course I had to add the white splatter all over the background. And this is how my background looks once all dried. Look at that beautiful shine. So now I'm gonna keep it aside and work on my skunk. I'm inking the body and the tail that I die cut out of grey cardstock using Black Soot Distress ink. And before I move on to the next step, I'm making sure my pieces are completely dry, so I'm heating it with my heat tool. And now I'm adding some white ink details to my skunk using my white pigment ink and a very fine blending brush. Keeping the black die cut as a guide, I'm adding the white ink to the forehead of the skunk. Next I'm gonna go ahead and work on his tail. Here I'm adding 2 lines on each tail. One on the very top edge of the tail die cut, the other one almost in the middle, making sure I follow the shape of the tail. Pigment ink takes time to dry, so make sure you're either giving the pieces enough time to dry or just hit it with the heat tool as I'm doing here. I'm inking the white piece that's gonna go on the belly of the skunk with whatever ink is left on my black blending tool. And now it's time to assemble the pieces. I'm just gluing everything together using some liquid glue. Fun putting together these skunks. For the eyes, I used googly eyes instead of die cuts. Next, it's time to work on the images that my skunk will be holding. So here I've stamped all the images that I need from Scent with Love add-on stamp set. First, to color all my images, I used R39, R29 and R24 for the reds. I used B28, B26 and B24 for the blues. Using some toner gray markers here to color that poof image. Using RV14 and RV11 to color the cupcake. E29 and E39 to color the cupcake wrapper. For my flowers, I decided to go with BV markers, but that was a wrong choice. I used BV04 and BV00 to color my flowers, but I'm gonna change my mind and use some RV markers on top of them. I used RV29 and RV25 here. I also used YG06 to color the stem of the flowers. Once done, I have die cut these images off camera, and here I'm just working on the placement of how I want my skunk to hold all these images. I fiddled with the images a little bit until I liked all the placement. And here, before gluing my skunk to the background, I'm first gluing the tail behind him, and then I'm gonna go ahead and glue the skunk at an angle. Next, I'm working on the sentiment on a black strip of cardstock. I prepped using anti-static powder tool. I'm stamping the sentiment using some clear ink. Poured some white embossing powder on top of it, and now heat setting it using my heat tool. Here I'm trimming my sentiment strips using my scissor. And before I actually commit and stick these sentiment strips on my card, I want to first finish my card and see where I want to put my sentiments. Here I die cut a grass border using some light green cardstock from my stash and gluing it to the very bottom of the card. And here I'm stamping Happy Valentine's Day using some black ink directly to that grass border. Next, I'm gluing those sentiment strips using some liquid glue to the top of my card. And the complete sentiment reads, "You make me feel sentimental, Happy Valentine's Day." Added the heart image and the poof image for finishing touches. And I used this Valentine's Day sentiment because I actually made this card before Valentine's Day, but I could not edit the video to show it to you guys. Well, you can use this card design for any occasion, just swap the sentiments. And to finish off this card, I added a card front to a white card base, adding some highlights to my skunk using my jelly roll pen, and that finishes my gorgeous card for today. Now let's work on the tag. So here I have another skunk, making him hold a mini sneaker. Set a tape behind the sneaker to glue it in place. I'm adding some glue dots to both his hands so that it looks like he's holding the sneakers. Next, gluing the tail here using some liquid glue. And that just finishes my card and an extra skunk holding the sneaker. So created another skunk holding the sneaker and I added that to a white cardstock and I created it into a tag. What works for you, either put the skunk on a cardstock and create it as a tag or just use the skunk as is. And that finishes my video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Here are a few more videos that you might like to watch. Thank you for visiting. Have a nice day.